compose myself for a minute. This is fast. This is very fast. Guys, and welcome back to Drive New Hampshire. This is the 2008 Shelby GT500 Ford Mustang. A car that can truly take people's breath away and really needs no introduction unless you're introducing it into a crowd of people. And although it doesn't do everything well, this car has one thing that a lot of the competition doesn't: heritage. Now today I'm going to take you on a tour of the Ford Mustang Shelby GT500 and talk about its features, performance stats, and then I'm going to take it out on the road and see how it goes. But first, a little history lesson on the Shelby Mustang, and Mustangs in general. Released in 1964 was this Ford Mustang. Giving birth to one of my favorite car genres, the muscle car. Effectively putting the biggest engine possible, usually from a truck, into the lightest, smallest bodies possible, creating lightning fast machines like this. Now this was a very popular idea, as Ford found out when they sold 22,000 Mustangs the first day. This was a car that was advertised as the car to be designed by you, with many options as to interior, exterior, and performance options. You could build an economical version, a plain Jane version, or a fast one. Then in 1965, Carroll Shelby got his hands on one and created the first Shelby GT350. The GT350 offered 35 more horsepower over the standard Mustangs. It also offered beefed up suspension, the battery relocated to the trunks, the fiberglass hood, amongst a few other mods. Now the savings in weight and boost in power did exactly what you would think it would do. Made the GT350 a screamer. Who the hell is Carroll Shelby, you're probably asking yourself? Well, Carroll Shelby was born in Texas and started life as a World War II flight instructor. He then segued into land-based vehicles and racing cars. He then went on to breaking land speed records on the Bonneville Flats, won the 24 Hours of Le Mans in 1959, and was even named Sports Illustrated Car Driver of the Year twice. Shelby and Ford's relationship began out of Ford's race war with Ferrari. Shelby was tasked with taking the reins of the Ford race program, and when giving the task of turning the Mustang into a race car, Shelby responded to Lee Iacocca by saying, "So Lee, you want me to make a racehorse out of a mule?" That mule was the first Shelby GT350. Shelby and Ford continued to build cars together until 1970, after Shelby terminated his partnership with them, making 1970 the last year of a Shelby Mustang that we'd see for a long time. Now in 2006, after 5 generations of missing out, Ford and Shelby rekindled their relationship and began releasing cars together once again. 2 years after that, we were given this. Now we start with the exterior of the Shelby Mustang, and we start with the front. Up front you have two upper and lower very wide front fascias that feed air in to cool that supercharged V8. That air then escapes up the top on the two heat extractors. You also have a fully functional front air splitter. Under the hood was this 5.4 liter Root style supercharged V8. It makes 500 horsepower as the name suggests, and 480 foot-pounds of pavement braking torque. And this is actually the same engine that's in the Ford GT, one of my beloved dream cars.
Well, isn't that special?
But this is an iron block, the Ford GT is an aluminum block. This has a wet sump oil system, the Ford GT has the dry sump. Now another exterior feature that adds to the classic iconic look of the Shelby Mustang is the two white overbody racing stripes along with the side racing stripes. This pays homage to the original Shelby Mustangs, and all that gives this Mustang a look reminiscent of the past. Now we move around to my favorite thing on many things, the rear end. Of course, you have the stripes continuing over the body down to the bottom of the bumper, passes over this rear deck lid spoiler. Down towards the bottom you have this diffuser style bumper, and at the very bottom you have the two chrome plated exhaust tips finished with the Shelby logo. Now finishing off the outside styling of the Shelby GT500, you of course have these 18 by 9.5 inch alloy wheels fitted in the center with the SVT center cap. Now, if you didn't know, SVT stands for Special Vehicle Team. That's Ford's in-house performance division. Peeking through the wheels, you can just see a sliver of the 4-piston Brembo brake calipers. Now, moving to the rear trunk of the Shelby GT500. Now, this is actually smaller than I thought. What impedes this trunk the most is this giant subwoofer in the back here. As I mentioned, this does have an 1,000-watt shaker sound system, and it looks like they put most of it in the back here. So that does impede a little bit of your storage space, but I was still able to put 2 bags of camera equipment, 3 tripods, a camera slider about that big. Definitely not as big as I thought, but still usable.
That's what she said.
Now we move to the interior of the Shelby GT500. Now it's actually a very comfortable place to be. Much more comfortable than I was expecting. I was expecting with the GT500 to be a very rough, very raw, more plasticky than it is interior. When I did a review on a 2006 Corvette, I really blew up because everyone really on the interior of the C6 Corvette. They were plastic, too much plastic, and I really ranted on about how that didn't matter in that car. At the price point of that vehicle and the demographic who bought it, they didn't care what the interior is made of. What mattered was the massive power plant under the hood and the legacy that follows the car. And this is absolutely no different. The interior of this is actually very comfortable. You of course have these nice leather bucket seats, side bolsters to hold you in around hard corners, which might not be a good thing to do in this car in the first place. You have perforated leather inserts here, along on the door panel. And of course, both seats are embossed with the Shelby Cobra. You have this nice leather-wrapped steering wheel with red contrast stitching and nice 10 and 2 notches. Of course, finished in the middle with the Shelby GT500 Cobra logo. It's a nice size wheel and it allows you to clearly see all the gauges. And as for your center control stack, it's pretty basic Ford. There's nothing special here. In the middle here, you do have 2 cup holders with LED lighting. You can change the color of that lighting and the lighting of the gauges in the control center. And of course, down here, you do have your 6-speed short throw shifter, along with a very strangely shaped e-brake handle. Now, I'm 6'5". I do have the seat all the way back and my knee still hits the front here. But with the steering wheel up like this, it's a comfortable driving position for me. But if you're any taller, you would have a tough time with this. You also still have 2 power outlets in here. One up here right next to the traction control button that you should not press in this. And down in the center console here, once you flip up this nicely leather wrapped console cover, you do have another power outlet along with an aux input. I do really like the top of the dash here. It's covered in leather and it's shaped like the old Mustang. that design is actually still carried on into the current generation of Mustang. So now it's time to get this GT500 on the road and see how she does. First thing you notice is the clutch is a little bit odd. It's a hydraulic heavy-duty clutch on the Shelby Mustang, and it takes a little bit getting used to. That hydraulic, you can feel where it grabs. It's really towards the top, but that just simply takes some getting used to. I was warned before I even drove this that I would probably stall it many times, and I'm happy to say I haven't. Rev matching your shifts with this thing is actually very easy, much easier than I thought with this kind of clutch. Next, you notice this beautiful view over the hood. Now, the racing stripes look awesome on this thing, and you can just see the bumps where those two heat extractors come out of the hood. And of course, you're holding onto this nice leather-wrapped steering wheel, nice 10 and 2 notches. It feels great. It's a perfect size, I think, for this type of car. It allows you to see clearly all of the gauges, especially the speedometer, to know just how much over the speed limit you're going. In the middle, you have this cluster of gauges: fuel, coolant temp, oil pressure, and then of course up top, boost. And then to the right, you have a nice tachometer. This car redlines at 6,000 RPM, and that's actually where it makes max horsepower. You have a nice glowing SVT logo in the middle there. Now below, you'll see the odometer. This car actually only has 12,000 miles on it for being a 2008, and that's very good. This thing is mint. First, let's talk about the handling, because it's kind of the elephant in the room. Now, I'm just going to go out there and say it. This thing is stiff. It's very stiff. The way the suspension is in this is the way it is. There's no adjustability settings in here. There's no switching this to comfort or touring. I like that the only adjustability I have with this car is if I want to turn off traction control or not. That just says something about what kind of car that this is. Having adjustability in other cars is a great thing. And I did a review on the BMW 4 Series Grand Coupe that had sport suspension, that had comfort suspension, and it had an eco mode. I like that this doesn't have that. This is supposed to be this way, and it almost scares people away if it's too rough for them. The steering feel for this is also very firm. It's actually a lot stiffer than I was expecting. For some reason, I'm not mad about that. It feels perfect for this car, actually. It's wonderful. And they probably have it stiff because this is a muscle car. This is meant to go fast in a straight line. That's when you want to have stiff steering. You don't want to be moving the wheel around a little bit, little twitches at high speeds. You want it to be firm. Now, this thing's handling a nice sweeping corner extremely well. It's very level and there's not much body roll. Now it's time to open it up a little bit. I'm not going to tell you how fast that was. It's a handful, though. It wants you to pay attention and keep it in a straight line, I can tell you that. So as I said, 500 horsepower, and you can feel it, 480 foot-pounds of torque. That means 0 to 60 in 4.3 seconds. These actually have a limited top speed of 155 miles an hour, but if you remove the governor, it goes all the way up to 185. That's 3 miles every minute. That's the 5.4 liter supercharged V8. The torque is everywhere in this thing. Every gear you go to hit it, it's got the power there. It's great. So that's another benefit of having the supercharger on top, cramming air into the engine. The exhaust note from the back sounds absolutely fantastic. it's actually not that overpowering in the car. Right now, I hear more wind noise than I hear of that 5.4 liter V8, which is very surprising. I didn't think this would have much insulation. I mean, when I pictured driving this car, I actually imagined it to be much more raw than it is. I wasn't expecting it to be this comfortable and civilized, to be completely honest. Sending its power to this 6-speed Tremec gearbox. None of these Shelbys came in automatics. They were all 6 speeds with the Tremec gearbox, and it has a short throw shifter. It's actually way shorter than I expected for a muscle car, especially. Being a Tremec, it shifts clean, it shifts smooth. But I'll tell you, when I went to accelerate in this, it wants you to pay attention. This thing is not just a point and shoot. You have to make sure the bullet gets to its destination, and this thing wants you to hang on. I don't even have time to make a facial expression when I'm accelerating, because the thing wants you to hold on. I like that it demands your attention. You can't let the thing go. But it makes it such a riot to drive. Now again, what makes the accelerations and stuff a little squirrely in this, and while we're on the topic, these Mustangs, well, they have a reputation behind them for leaving car meets in a little bit of a flamboyant manner, and the drivers try to do their best Ken Block impressions, and they end up tell you why that happens, and it's because of the live rear axle. Now that's ancient technology. Ford probably used that on the Model T. You're putting 500 horsepower and 480 foot-pounds of torque to that live rear axle, and it doesn't handle it very well. It makes accelerations very squirrely, and as I said, you have to focus. You can't let this car just go. You have to drive it, and that's what I love about it. Now when the power goes out of that live axle, it's getting put down on 285 series tires. Now those are some big fat sticky tires. They're Eagle F1s. Now of course, we can't talk about power without talking about the brakes. As I said, this has front Brembo brakes, 4-piston calipers, and those brakes do a fantastic job of bringing this 4,000-pound vehicle to a stop. The only way to stop it faster actually would be driving it into a tree. But I wouldn't recommend that one. But what I love most about this GT So I want to thank you all very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed watching as much as I enjoyed making this, because I had a fantastic time in the GT500. Be sure to give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Give it a thumbs up for Carroll. I'm sure he'd love to.